I tell you at the Mass, the little boy, they told him he couldn't tell people how to get to heaven because he didn't know how to get to the church. You know, one time when he was on radio, remember, for about 22 years, and nobody knew what he looked like, okay? So he was at St. Patrick's Cathedral, and this man came up to him because he had his Roman collar. He said, "Father, I think I've got to go to confession, you know." He said, "You know that Monsignor Sheen, he's on the radio." He said things that disturbed some Protestant friends of mine, and I'm so upset with him, I'm angry, I think I got to go to confession. And so Bishop Sheen, he says to the guy, he said, "You know what? You know, don't be upset. I'm sure you didn't mean there was no meanness in your anger. You were just upset." And you know, I get upset with him many times myself, you know. So he calmed the guy down. He said, "You can wait until your next regular time for confession," and so on. And as he was leaving, the guy said to him, "You know, Father, if there were only more priests in the church like you, this would be a wonderful church." He had strange things. A couple more things here. One time he was in a cab, and the cabbie said to him, "You're that priest on television?" He said, "Yes." He said, "You write a lot of books, don't you?" He said, "Yes. Would you like me to send you one of my books?" "Oh, no, that's okay. I already read a book." So I never know who you're going to read to. By the way, these are some cards. There's enough for everybody to take one of these, and if you know anybody might like it's his life, you know, in here, some nice photos of him. And on the back is the prayer to obtain a favor through him, and also prayer for his canonization. And those are also found on these two cards. This is the prayer for canonization, the black and white. This one here, color one, is for his favor. Okay, and that was my part of the work in the canonization process of Bishop Sheen, was to deal with the possible miracle cases. We can't call them miracle cases. We call them alleged or possible. The Pope has declared a miracle. And we have 3 cases in Rome already of possible miracles. And this is the latest one we sent, and I'll mention this first. There is a copy of this if you'd like to pick it up on the table inside. This is Bishop Jenke here. And this is a family. This is the family of Engstrom is the name of the family. This little boy here, his name is James Fulton. When he was born, he's about 1 year old now. When he was born, he was stillborn. His umbilical cord got wrapped around his neck. He had no air. Okay, so he was stillborn, and he was delivered at home by a midwife, and there was a medical nurse there who examined him. No signs of life. They called for the ambulance right away. As the ambulance took the child to the hospital, they tried to revive the child. No life. When he got to the hospital, they examined him they had a child's emergency room, and you know, no life. And then finally took him to the main emergency room. No life. 61 minutes after he was born, the doctors were ready to declare him dead. The mother kept constantly praying to Bishop Sheen. The baby started to breathe. He has absolutely nothing wrong with him, no mental, no physical, no emotional problems, nothing that we can see. He seems to be a totally healthy little child. 61 minutes. And when they took the testimony, this is a doctor here, this is Dr. Louis Varela. He works with our cause. You know, works with the Archbishop Sheen Foundation. He's a top doctor in Houston, and he was taking all the information. He represented our foundation, and he said he spoke to about 15 medical personnel who gave testimonies, and he said some of them who were not had no faith, you know, didn't believe in God, said to him, "We've never seen anything like this. This is beyond belief." You know, to survive for 61 minutes. Come back. He brought the baby back to life. That's what he did. The baby was dead. So I think he will be a great saint, you know, God willing. When he once wrote an editorial, he wrote in 2 newspapers. He wrote in a secular paper for about 7 years. He had an editorial, and in a Catholic newspaper for about 15 years. And in these newspapers, in one of the editorials, he wrote, "America needs a saint." And what he meant by that was, At the time, I guess we only had Mother Cabrini as the only American saint, and she was a naturalized citizen. He said, what we need is a homegrown American, grew up here in the States, and became a saint. Just to show that America has now reached the point of a spiritual maturity that we can produce saints. He said, we need somebody from the heartland of America. What do you think of the heartland of America? Where do you think that's at? Don't you think of Iowa and Nebraska? And he was proposing Bishop Ford of Maryknoll, who was from Brooklyn. He said, well, Brooklyn is characteristic of America. You know, it's a unique American experience to live in Brooklyn. And but Bishop Ford was a martyr in China. You know, he proposed him, and the article was entitled "America Needs a Saint." And when I read that editorial, I said to myself, you know what? I think Archbishop Sheen is the saint America needs now, because he, with his teaching, will help to pick us up out of the mess that we are in. Because he was a great defender of the truth. He used to say, the truth is the truth, even if nobody believes it. And error is error even if everybody believes it. So he knew that the difference between the truth of an idea and the popularity of an idea. Political correctness, he was never politically correct. He spoke what he believed to be the truth. He used to say, if you want people to remain the way they are, tell them what they want to hear. If you want them to grow, tell them what they need to hear. Right? And those of you who are parents raising your children, you know, you didn't always tell your children what they wanted to hear, did you? But you told them what they needed to hear so that they would grow up the right way. And that's what we need. We need a voice that's right. He used to say, we don't need a voice that's right when everybody else is right. He said, we need a voice that's right when everybody else is wrong. That's why we need him today. He used to say, this is a great time. This is an interesting quote. This is a great time to be alive. He said, we can no longer take anything for granted in America. He saw it. By the way, he's dead 32 years. He said this years ago. He was a very prophetic person. He could see what was coming. And he said, can no longer take anything for granted. He said, rather you have to stand up and take sides in a world that no longer sees the suffering face of Christ. And that's the challenge. I really feel of any quote, that's one of the most challenging quotes that he gave. You have to stand up and take sides. You know, you can't just take it for granted, I'm a Catholic. You got to stand up for your faith. And in this day and age, right, in this politically correct environment that we live in, we have to proclaim the truth. And that's what he was willing to do. He was very akin to John Paul II. You know, he used to, one time a reporter asked Pope John Paul II if you could tell our Catholic people just one quote from the scriptures, what would you tell them from the whole Bible? And he figured you had to think for a moment. Without hesitation, he just said, tell the people, the truth will set you free. And that's the kind of man John Paul was, and that's the kind of man Bishop Sheen was. Okay? Two kindred souls. By the way, very good friends from the time of the Vatican Council. And when Bishop Sheen wrote his autobiography called Treasure in Clay, he makes a statement in there that he said that John Paul will go down as one of the greats in history. And people are calling him John Paul the Great. He was a prophet, by the way. He was a personal prophet. He never told people things about their life. I'm working with a lady now. She was 6 years old. He went to visit her family in New Orleans. Her family was chosen as the host family while he was there. She said she had an older brother who was like a rocket scientist and a mathematician. He was very brilliant. He greeted her older brother. He greeted an older sister, and she was just 6 years old. And all he said to her is that someday he's going to do something very great for the Blessed Mother. She's doing it now, you know. The Bishop of Trenton, New Jersey. He served Bishop Sheen's Mass as a seminarian. When the Mass was over, Bishop Sheen said to him, someday you're going to be a bishop. And I've met more than one bishop to tell me that. And then but his greatest prophecy happened on his television program, Life is Worth Living. Did I mention that story today? He took Shakespeare's play about Julius Caesar. Now I've not come to praise Caesar but to bury him. And he very cleverly changed all the names in that Shakespeare had used to all the communist leaders. So Stalin, Lenin, Khrushchev, Chernenko, Brezhnev and all, he put them all in there, okay? And at the end of the program, he went up to the camera and he said, now remember, it was a live show. And he said, yes, Mr. Stalin, your day will come, and it will come very soon. 5 days later, Stalin had a massive stroke that paralyzed him. And 4 days after that, he was dead. He did have the gift of prophecy. But he was also a prophet in that he could see what was coming. He said in 1952, he said this, he said, if we accept contraception, which is to block possibility of conception, you know, and during an act of sexual relation between husband and wife, if we accept contraception, he said, then abortion, euthanasia, and violence will follow. 1952, he said that. People said, it's impossible, can't happen. We got it all now, though.